think that's it. Okay, so my name's Elisa Sherbin, and I'm one of the dietitians at Yale Health. And we thought we'd do something a little different and try a cooking demo. Little nerve-wracking to do something like live like this, so bear with me. But hopefully that'll go smoothly, and we'll kind of talk about a few different recipes and then try to weave in some tips for Thanksgiving. And I try to focus this on kind of diabetes friendly or blood sugar friendly, because you know, we it's a huge health issue for so many people, and Thanksgiving happens to be one of the more challenging holidays for blood sugar control. So I thought we could kind of address some of that as we go along. And I have my colleague Becky Purcell on with me too, and she's going to man the chat. So she will check that and mention the questions because I'm kind of far away from my screen. So feel free if you have questions to either, you can unmute yourself too, but put it in the chat as we go along, and I'll answer things as we go. So I kind of picked a few recipes today that highlight winter squash, because there are, as I was just mentioning earlier, there's so many varieties and they're so jam-packed with nutrition. And, you know, they tend to actually be relatively low in carbohydrates as far as starchy vegetables go. So they can definitely be have a benefit to including them even over other starches like potatoes, or even other starches that are even less nutritious like rice or, you know, pasta, things like that. So, you know, as a side dish, of course, Thanksgiving, they might show up, but they, you know, they're really available all winter. So, you know, take advantage of them, not just for Thanksgiving, but for, you know, the months that are upcoming. They last a while. So, you know, as I was showing you this very hardy looking squash, you can see the skin is so tough. So they really, they last a while before they go bad. So it's not like other summer vegetables that you have to use in a really short period of time. So they're really forgiving like that. You could pick it up and use it like months later. So anyway, and I find that certain ones are more available in the grocery store and some are not. I'd say the most common that you see is probably this one, which is butternut squash. And then the other most common one is acorn squash. So we're gonna use butternut squash in our first recipe, which is a roasted butternut squash and cauliflower soup. And then it's, we put some pumpkin seeds on it at the end. So anyway, we'll highlight the butternut squash today. And then we're gonna make a kale salad. And I usually use butternut squash in the kale salad, but I figured I would try to use some other squashes. So I'm not sure if people are familiar with this one. This is a delicata squash. I find it's a little harder to find in the grocery store. I even was looking for it and it was sold out. So I had to go back and get it. So you may or may not be able to find this. So in this recipe, you can feel free to use any winter squash. I actually ended up using this and I pre-roasted it. And I used some this honey nut squash as well. So you really could use whatever you can find. So don't feel like this one is a necessity for this particular recipe. And in that recipe, there's pomegranate seeds, feta, and toasted walnuts. So we'll do that, and then do at the end a flourless chocolate brownie pumpkin cake. So we're going to use some different ingredients in that are more blood sugar friendly. So we'll kind of go through these things. So what I'm going to start with is the soup, and then I'm going to simmer it and kind of go to the next recipe, and hopefully this will work out smoothly. Yeah, wish me luck. So, okay, so I'm going to turn on my my heat on my stove here to medium high. Have olive oil in it already. So I just wanted to point out as that's heating up that olive oil is a really excellent oil to cook with, and really high in what we call polyphenols. So it not only is a monounsaturated fat, which is heart healthy, but it's also rich in these plant chemicals called polyphenols. So it's definitely beneficial to use in your cooking. If you're going to use it at a really high heat, you may want to use, if you want to use a higher heat for cooking, you might want to use something like avocado oil. So that's another heart healthy oil. So I just wanted to point out, I'm using olive oil in this. And one other point that I always make with olive oil is, getting a good quality olive oil is worth it because you're going to get more of the health benefits in there. So one thing to look for is on the back, there's a harvest date, and it'll tell you when it was harvested. And so try to get as close to, usually it's in the fall that you'll find the date. So right now you're still seeing it finish up from last year, but in the next month or two, you'll see the harvest dates move to 2020. Then there's also some other, some other little details on the label that'll tell you that it was, it's got like quality marks on it. So anyway, this is one you'll find anywhere. Like I could find this in Walmart, Target, lots of foods, every food store that is a good quality one. So otherwise it can be a little overwhelming because there's about 50 brands of olive oil on the shelf. So anyway, that's heating up. I throw my pre-chopped onions and garlic, and two reasons I pre-chop them. One, luckily, because my thumb's not working right now, but also because once you start cooking onions and garlic, the phytochemicals in them are not as easy for you to access any longer. But if you pre-cut them and let them sit for about 10 minutes, something in them helps you get those plant benefits. So it's actually not a bad idea to pre-chop your onions and garlic 10 minutes before. So anyway, I pre-chopped the onion, which is one medium-sized onion. I'm gonna throw that in. And I also minced the garlic. I have two cloves of garlic on here, but you can, if you like garlic, bump that up because there's a lot of health benefits in garlic and it's great for your immune system as well. I just use a mincer because I really don't enjoy chopping garlic. so I use that really easy. And I have my garlic here, which I'm going to throw in. Let that go for a second. And then after I put that in, I'm going to put in my squash, which I pre-roasted. So I'll explain that to you. Actually pre-roasted, it's squash and cauliflower. So what I did, I'm going to take this out. I can do that with one hand. So this is the butternut squash, which I pre-chopped and put on this cookie sheet. Definitely use the foil or parchment so that you can easily get it off and you don't have to clean it up. So that's our butternut squash. And then the cauliflower roasted. Even, normally speaking, having roasted cauliflower as a side dish versus steamed tastes delicious. And that's why I'm roasting it in this recipe, because it gives it more flavor. So flavor is really key here when we want to, watch our diet and be careful of not overdoing it. If we get more flavor, we just don't need as much of something. So anyway, the roasting helps improve the flavor as well. I'll put that here. And so what I'm going to do is now I'm going to put that's the garlic. Okay. So let me make sure I'm on target here. Okay. The other thing I did, and actually one other tip before. So butternut squash, it's very hard to cut like this. So what I do is I poke some holes in it. I put it in the microwave for about 4 minutes, and it comes out a little bit soft, and then you can peel it really easily and chop it up. The other really quick tip is you can buy it pre-chopped. So if you don't want to even deal with it, look for it in the fresh produce section pre-chopped, or even in the freezer section, you can often find butternut squash. So, not everyone wants to tackle the whole thing because it is a little bit difficult, but like I said, there's some tips that make it easier. So one other thing we're doing here is we're going to include, what's that to burn? I'm going to take that off for a second. We don't burn it while I'm talking. We're going to put cashews in to give it some creaminess without having to add cream. So our cashews are a plant-based source of kind of that creamy texture. So that's why we're going to add those. So what helps is by pre-soaking them. So I pre-soak these overnight just in some water. You could do it a few hours before, or you can do it with hot water. If you put boiling water over it for about 15 minutes, that does the job as well. So there's different ways you can do it depending on how much time you have. So I will throw these in as well. So what I'm going to first do is throw my cauliflower in. So hopefully this will work, but I find it's nice and easy to just kind of scoop it up like this. No mess. Get that in there, and that's garbage. And then, let's see, I'm going to get the next one, which is my butternut squash. Sticking a little bit more, so let me just, you can see it kind of caramelizes the squash, which makes it even a little bit sweeter. But I mean, it doesn't change the carb content, it just makes it a little sweeter and more enjoyable. Okay. All right. Great. So now we got our squash and cauliflower in, and we're going to just throw the cashews right in there as well. And now we're going to add liquid by, I'm trying to keep it plant-based. So I'm using a no chicken broth, which is a vegetarian broth that's low sodium. So I like this one. Again, it's not always easy to find, but if you happen to, look in the store, this is a great one. All you have in here is onion, celery, carrots, spices, and, so very simple ingredients and not much sodium. So I'm going to add 2 of these to get my liquid, and then I'll simmer that for like 10 or 20 minutes. It's pretty forgiving, so if I'm busy doing the other things, that's okay. Okay, so let me get that back on the heat. Turn that up to get it to a boil, and then I'll simmer it. Just give it a stir. So you can see really simple ingredients, and we're keeping it. We're going to add some more flavor punches in a little bit and immunity boosters to it, but we're going to let it simmer for a little bit. Let me make sure I got all the ingredients in there. Yep. Okay. So we'll come back to that in a little bit, and I'm going to move on to our salad. So, okay, so the next one was the kale salad. So a lot of people have, kind of gotten frustrated over the kale craze, but kale really does have a lot of nutritional benefits. And some lettuces just don't compare. But kale is a pretty hardy green. So, it is important to really kind of prep it in a way that's enjoyable, like that makes it enjoyable to eat. So if you just, put kale in a bowl and made it and said that's salad, you're not going to like it. So it takes a little prep. So I'm just going to show you kind of what we're looking to do. So this is my kale. This is going to be our kale salad, the base. So what I did here was, I'm going to show you by just grabbing a leaf here and kind of showing you. So I take this hard stem. I take all the lettuce or the kale away from this hard stem. So all you're left with is the leaves. And then what you're going to do is rip it up as much as you can with your hands. And then I even do, kind of a final cutting it into the tiniest bits, because that's going to make it a lot more enjoyable when you're eating it. And you're also unlocking the nutrients that way, because certain healthy vegetables are really kind of they're protective of their nutrients. You have to manipulate them to get it out. So when you're they call it massaging kale, you're literally, working the kale and you're sort of breaking down the cells in the kale that are making it tough. And you're making it really kind of much different texture. So, and I'll also add a little bit of olive oil to help in massaging it. So you're working that, and so you can notice that the kale is much different in terms of texture. So now at this point, it's really cut up very small and it's massaged for a while and it's kind of ready to go. And so what I'm going to add to this is a few ingredients. One was pomegranate. So I was going to show you how to get at the pomegranate seeds. Not everyone has done this. I've actually only started eating pomegranates a few years ago, and I had to Google, how do you open it? How do you get the seeds out? And also, how do you not get this red liquid all over you, kind of like beets? It could be very messy. So to avoid that, one of the tips is to fill a bowl with water. I'll just show you this. And you're going to take, now I probably, let's see if I have a knife handy that I can use. Okay, we'll just use this one. Hopefully this will work for me. The knife I had set aside, hold on a second. Okay, well, hopefully this will work out. So what we're going to do is just make a kind of an incision at the top. And then we'll take that off. You can see even the drops of red entered the bowl, luckily, not the counter. And you're going to score it down. Okay. And then it's really easy. You're just going to rip it apart and you're going to plop it in the water. And so you're going to see all the seeds. And as you're breaking them apart in the water, you're not getting it anywhere else. And the nice thing is, once the seeds will go to the bottom and the membrane here will float to the top. So you're separating this out and then it becomes much easier. Otherwise, it can be a really red mess. So you're going to avoid that. So, and right now they're in season for at least through about January. So you'll see them in the food store. Like I picked these up the Walmart food store last week for $1 a piece. So that's a really great deal for this because these are, pretty big. They come out with, I'll show you what one I did it yesterday and it gave me a cup and a half more, 2 cups of seeds. So it really is a good time to get them right now because they're available and they're much more reasonable. And generally pomegranates are pretty expensive. So I look for, them this time of year. And then they're great because they're colorful and they're really packed with nutrition. So pomegranates, the seeds are about 3 times the amount of antioxidants of other foods like, think of like how red wine is healthy for you because of the flavonoids that are in them, the phytochemicals. There's 3 times the amount in pomegranates. So this is a great way to get some really extra nutrition in. Okay, so let me put this aside and bring this back. And so I'll add these to my salad. Looks really nice with the red. Then I'm going to add a couple of other things. I roasted ahead, again, the squash, just so it would go a little bit smoother. So let me take that out. So like I said, I did a delicata, and I did the honey nut squash for this. So what's kind of nice about it is the colors. There's two colors. So you'll see that there's kind of a lighter yellow and a darker orange, and the delicata is lighter and the honey nut is the darker. So I'm going to add that to my salad. Okay, easy cleanup. And then another piece of this is toasted walnuts. So you don't have to toast them. Don't feel like you have to do that, but it brings it enhances the flavor to toast them. So it'll kind of bring the flavor up a notch. So you're going to keep it as you're roasting your squash, you can put in the nuts at the same temperature, but just take them out around 6 minutes if they're smaller pieces like these, or if they're larger walnuts, you can leave them in about 8 minutes or so. So that is also, walnuts are a great source of omega-3 fats. So they're one of the better plant sources of omega-3 fats. So great to include them. Okay, and as we move along here, another ingredient, if you want to keep this plant-based, you can stop here and we'll get the dressing together. If you like a little extra, kind of like a little extra flavor and you do eat dairy, this is a great addition as well. This is actually, this is a fat-free feta. So it's made with skim milk. The reason I'm really trying to keep the saturated fat out of these foods that we're making today, because we also, with diabetes or pre-diabetes, you want to watch your saturated fat intake, and we know that the traditional Thanksgiving meal has tons in it already. So these will be some healthy ways to balance things out. So, and fat-free feta has the same taste as far as flavor. And the recipe calls for about 1.5 cups. But you can really, you may not feel like you need all that either, and that's up to you. So I think I'm probably gonna just go a little bit less. Okay, just gonna lower that. Okay, so the last piece here is the dressing. I'm gonna make that in a little mason jar here. So the first ingredient is olive oil. Now, this is a great time to use the extra virgin olive oil, the best olive oil you have, because you're not heating it. You're going to get all of the nutrients without any of it breaking down with heat. So use a great, good quality olive oil. And another benefit to making your dressing is you can then use a better oil. Most salad dressings use a very cheap oil to keep costs down. So you can really get more nutrition out of a salad dressing by making it yourself. The other thing is you can really monitor the sodium intake, the sodium content, because most salad dressings have a lot of sodium in them. So we start with our olive oil. We are gonna use 1/2 of a lemon, the juice of 1/2 of the lemon. So I already pre-did that. Oops. There we go. And using the lemon juice, this gives it a little extra freshness, and it gives you a little vitamin C as well. I'm going to use apple cider vinegar as well. So I'm going to use a couple tablespoons of that. Okay, and another nice ingredient here is to use some Dijon mustard. So a teaspoon. Okay. Right, and let's see what else I am forgetting. Oh, here's my recipe. Yeah, so the other ingredients are sort of optional, but definitely putting some pepper in it will give it some extra kick. So just do some freshly ground pepper, and adding a little bit of salt can just kind of bring out some of the flavors, but you don't have to add a lot. So if you want to add, I'm going to leave it out today, but you can add, if you add 1/4 teaspoon of salt, that would be about 600 milligrams. So if you're serving, this is 6 servings. So it would only be 100 milligrams per serving. So it's not, it's not increasing it dramatically, but it is giving it some flavor. But if you're really being cautious about your sodium intake, then just leave it out. It's absolutely fine. And then let me see if there was anything else here that I missed. Yeah. Oh, the other thing was just a little talking about adding a little bit of honey. So just even a half a teaspoon you could add, just breaks the tartness a little bit. So, you know, but again, it's an optional ingredient because you have some ingredients that add a little bit of sweetness to your salad. Like the squash actually has a little sweetness, the pomegranate has a little sweetness. So you're really, you know, don't necessarily need to do that. But just a word about this, because there's always a little confusion that honey is better than sugar for diabetes or blood sugar control. For teaspoon, it does have the same amount of sugar as a teaspoon of white sugar. Or even I'm going to use maple syrup in something later, a teaspoon of maple syrup or a teaspoon of honey, same carbs. So no difference really. I'll be using maple syrup later. There's a little more nutrition in maple syrup. There's really not any difference in nutrition in honey. So, you know, but again, you can use a little bit here, but I'm going to leave out those ingredients just for ease. And so what you could do is just, you can get these caps again, like I get these at Walmart where you have a cap for the mason jar and you just shake it up. I happen to have this little immersion blender that I use came with another salad dressing thing. So okay. So I'm just, I don't want it to go all over the place. So let me just leave that. And I'm gonna shake it the rest of the way. And there you go. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Toss that up. Kind of looks nice, just like that, to see all the different colors and the textures. And you can also, the kale is really forgiving, so you can prepare that kale even a day or two in advance. It's not like other lettuces that wilt, it lasts. So it is also a salad that holds up nicely the next day. So that's kind of nice then. Anyway, so that's our kale salad. So one thing down, and I'm going to go back to look at our soup, which is kind of boiling nicely or simmering. And I think I'll just leave that to the end and do the next piece, which is our dessert. So what I decided for that is we'll do a chocolate, let me see what I called it, chocolate brownie pumpkin cake. So flourless though. So I left out the flour, and we're using, again, I'm trying to keep the animal fat out. So I'm going to use, I have 2 egg whites in here. You can even buy the pasteurized egg whites, which are nice and easy to use. You don't need to use whole eggs in here. It's definitely rich enough without it. So that's going to be our first ingredient. And then we're going to use some maple syrup to sweeten it, but not a lot. So we're going to add, whoops, it's hard with this thumb. Okay, we're going to add 1/3 cup of maple syrup. Okay. Just going down the list here. We're going to do 1 cup of pumpkin puree. And what's so nice about something like that is you just buy it in a can. So easy. So anyway, this is something nice to have in your pantry because lots of good nutrition here, lots of vitamins, minerals, you know, phytochemicals in the pumpkin. And you can use it as a fat replacer or egg replacer in a lot of recipes. So it's a great thing to have around and to boost the nutrition in your meals. And in this case, it's going to serve a couple of purposes in our cake. So I have a cup measured out. Let's see if this will just go right in. I might need to help it out. Yep. Okay. So a cup of that. And we're going to have, we are doing that next. Yeah, the almond butter. So the almond butter is going to be the fat in here. So again, more of a plant fat. And you don't even notice it's there, to be honest. So we're doing 1/3 cup. And one of the things I just wanted to point out with almond butter is when you're buying it, look at the ingredients and just make sure all it says is almonds. There's quite a number of brands that will add sugar or another hydrogenated fat to the almonds to make it maybe smoother. But when you're buying it, kind of keep an eye out for the ingredient list. just say almonds and that's it. Okay, so that's our almond butter. And then we have, sure I'm going in order here. We have a teaspoon of vanilla extract. And we have the, I'm using dark cocoa powder here. Now, so here's the thing, I kind of just learned this and I wasn't totally familiar until recently, that there's different types of cocoa powder out there. Some is called Dutch processed, and then others is called just natural cocoa. So there's actually a little bit more nutrition in the natural cocoa, but it's more bitter. So the Dutch process is less bitter because they put something called alkali in it. So when you use regular cocoa, you usually need to use baking soda because that kind of makes it less bitter. So when you're using the the Dutch process, you don't really need the baking soda. So there, I just want to point that out. So there's flavonoids in cocoa, but that does get somewhat affected by the processing. But of course, some of it's still there. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. I'm going to use the dark cocoa, and I'm going to leave out the baking soda. But if you use the natural cocoa, you can use the baking soda that's in the recipe. Okay, so let me just actually. Okay, so I need a half a cup of cocoa. Hopefully this doesn't dump all out on me. Okay, half a cup of cocoa. And what else do we have here? 2 teaspoons of the instant espresso powder. So the espresso powder is totally optional. And the purpose of that is it just enhances the chocolate flavor. So if you're really a chocolate fanatic and you want to get like maximum chocolate flavor, that helps it. So I have this espresso powder, just a little more cake. So I'm going to use this other instant coffee. Either way, if you want to use that, you can. And there's even some extra nutrients in coffee itself, like similar to what's in cocoa. I'm just going to add a teaspoon of that. And yeah, so then the last thing, so I'm going to mix this and then I'm going to fold in the chocolate chips. So, okay, first thing is get this. This is my immersion blender that has the other attachment is what tackled my thumb today. So I'm hoping this works out okay without wreaking havoc. Okay, so we're just going to blend this. It's a little hard to combine that almond butter. It's kind of takes a little extra time, but once this is all combined, we will fold in the chocolate chips, which just give it the extra kind of sweetness. So the maple syrup, like I said, is pretty conservative. So it's not a very sweet cake. Obviously, we want to keep the sugar content down. This has only 14 grams of carb per slice. And actually, it has 2.5 grams of fiber. And the interesting thing that I guess I didn't even know is that cocoa powder per tablespoon has 2 grams of fiber. So it's actually kind of a nice benefit to add cocoa powder because it doesn't have, it doesn't have sodium in it, doesn't have any other negative ingredients, and it has fiber in it. So, I mean, it is from a plant. So plant foods are where we're going to get our fiber. Okay, so that's pretty well combined. If I can get this off. Okay. And then we're going to add our half a cup of chocolate chips. I'm gonna miss those. And you can make these as brownies, like in a brownie pan. That's fine. I just thought, like for Thanksgiving, it's a little more nice presentation to make it into a cake. So totally up to you. And what I did was I used this kind of spring foam pan. which makes it really easy to get out. And I sprayed it with some avocado oil. And then I'm just gonna put that in. And this will bake. You have to really, it depends on the pan you're using. If you're using this smaller pan, I noticed that it does take more like 30 or 40 minutes because it needs to cook all the way through. You just basically, could monitor it after 20 or 25 minutes. If a toothpick comes out clean, then you're good. So that's kind of the best, probably the best way to check it out. So this will go in the oven then. And like I said, you'll, somewhere between 20 to 40 minutes, depending on the pan size. And then let me show you the finished product because I did this ahead of time. Okay, so this is our finished cake. And a nice, it is per serving, it's supposed to get 12 servings. So they're smaller slices, but this is a little bit of, like I said, it's not like a brownie, a thinner brownie, it's more like a cake size. And this is a powdered sugar. It's not going to add a lot more carbs to it, but it'll just make it look a little kind of attractive to have a little kind of little snow on top. But anyway, so that's our cake. And there's no flour in it. You're getting your fats from nuts, from almonds, and you're getting some extra fiber and nutrients from the pumpkin. And you're getting fiber from the cocoa powder. So it's really a great dessert because it's kind of has some health benefits tied in, and it shouldn't really cause too much of an issue with blood sugars, as one slice is 14 grams and it has a fair amount of fat in it. Let me double check. The fat is about 6 grams, which can be beneficial with blood sugars. When you have fat, it blunts the effect of the carbs a little bit, so you don't have as quick a rise in your blood sugar. So, so anyway, there we go with our cake. And we'll go back to our soup now, and we'll blend that. Now, this is where I want to be careful, so I'm going to switch use this immersion blender that I tried before. Okay, so yes.
Elisa, let me just ask you, because there's a question here. Because I don't have one of those, which it maybe, that should be added into our,
you don't need it.
Our food gadget, but is yours a certain brand, or do you recommend a certain brand?
I don't think it matters. The one thing is that let me remember it's 300 or 400. I'm trying to remember it's the power that it has. I'm blanking on what the measurement is, but this is a little higher powered. It's 400, but I've noticed that they come in 300 and 400. I think it would be fine. And this one has several attachments. So
that's what's really cool about it. Yeah.
Yeah. You can also grind like nuts or stuff with another attachment. But so they run around $60 or $70. But the one that's just this attachment are like $20, $25. So it can be helpful if you're making things that you don't want to have to transfer into something else.
Yeah.
With the soup, because it's it's hot, and I don't necessarily. I'm gonna, it's easier to do it in the pot.
Right.
So
well, keep your eye out for Black Friday sales.
Yeah, exactly. So before we finish up, I'm going to add my extra ingredients, which boost the flavor and the nutrition. So I'm putting in 2 tablespoons. This is what I use for ginger. This is my shortcut. I don't know if anyone else uses these, but I love these. It's basically already pureed ginger. So I'm doing 2 tablespoons. If you're not a fan of ginger, you don't have to add it, but it really does provide some extra nutrition and immuno boost. And it has a great flavor. It adds a great flavor because we don't want to rely on salt for the flavor. We want to rely on the other ingredients. So the other thing besides the ginger, we're going to add, so one of the things that happens is butternut squash is really bright, but when you add the cauliflower, which brings the carb content down, you lose a little bit of that bright color. But one of the ways we're going to boost the color back up again and get some extra nutrients is by adding turmeric. So we know turmeric, it's kind of hot in the news over the past few years for like anti-inflammatory. So there's no negative here. It's going to make the color brighter. It's going to really add these extra phytochemicals, curcuminoids is what they're called. And so we're going to add that in. And then our last piece is we want to add something that's going to help the curcuminoids in the turmeric get absorbed, because without pepper, it's harder for the body to get the benefit from the curcumin in the turmeric. So if that makes any sense. So anyway, we want to add the pepper, which will also add that extra flavor. And you could add like a half a teaspoon. I'm just grinding it here. Just be really liberal with it. That's coming out. Okay. I think that was it for this. Okay, so now we're gonna, fingers crossed this works without splattering everywhere. I'm gonna go on low speed and blend this. And that's on the top. Okay. So I've been like trying this recipe out, and it has been a great lunch option. I'll just say that because I've made it a few times, just making sure that the recipe, you know, kind of worked, and it's delicious. It's one of my favorite lunches now.
Do you think that the consistency would change at all if you just eliminated the cauliflower? You have someone that
can eliminate it. Absolutely. I really just added it because I'm thinking about blood sugars, and like as a soup, I know that, you know, your Thanksgiving meal is already going to have carbs at, you know, some key carbs are going to be present. Like obviously stuffing and potatoes are very popular. So if you had a soup to start with and it had, you know, a more moderate amount of carbs, I'm kind of, you know, thinking about it like that. Okay, I'm probably not going to finish it all the way to the consistency, but it'd probably take another couple minutes for it to be uniform in texture. But if you like a little texture in it, you can even leave it like it is right now. But as I was mentioning before, if you're not a fan of cauliflower, no problem. You can absolutely leave it out. And this, how liquid it is now, what I find changes as you store it. So you can even, if you find this is more liquidy than you like, you can use less broth. And add it as you're heating it up or, you know, consuming it. So that's the thing is it's a pretty flexible soup. So the thing I'm going to do next is I'll plate this and show you, okay, we want to do. I'll show you what this looks like. So you can see that color is pretty bright because of that turmeric. And what I like to do is add a little extra texture with some pumpkin seeds. And let me just put this down so I don't burn myself. Okay, so here is, let's see if that's visible.
Yep, that
right?
looks great.
Good. So again, it's just packed with nutrition and really kind of fits the fall theme. So I think this works great. I've also topped it. I think the toppings really make it because, you know, obviously a pureed soup has one texture, but I've also added like chopped up avocado or some other herbs or nutritional yeast is actually really good in it too, because it adds like a cheesy flavor. And if you do eat dairy, you could add some like shaved Parmesan or something like that to give it a little kick. But anyway, this is really kind of enjoyable as far as a starter. And there's like, as far as starting a meal with a soup, there's actually research that shows that that helps curb your intake. And I know for Thanksgiving, it's a hard day to curb your intake, period. But if you start with a soup, you might just really kind of get you on the right track for the meal. And I just wanted to point out for the meal itself, it's good to kind of think about, be choosy with the carbs that you're eating, because there's so many carbs that are on the table that You don't have to have all of them, but you might want to just stick with your favorites. I know this year a lot of people are paring it down with less people, so they might be preparing less variety of options. So you might want to stick with the favorites, and maybe add a few new really healthy plant-based in sides as well, like these. So yeah, that is our. I'm glad I got through that. And let's see, not too. Looking at the time here. Okay, we're kind of in time. I have no idea how long that'll go. So is there any questions at all?
No, we have all looks so good. I'm hungry.
Oh, great. Well, everybody should have gotten the recipes yesterday, but if there's any questions about them, or if you need me to resend those to you, I'm happy to do that. And I hope you'll try the recipes and let me know how they go.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Great job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was great.
Oh,
Everything looks so good.
Thank you so much for coming and helping me.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, the questions were really just about the cauliflower,
Okay.
about the immersion blender. Someone thought it was a great idea to add cashews to the soup and, make it more creamy, using that as an option.
Great.
And that was about it. So that's good.
Right. Well, we're done. I didn't know if I could pull it off.
You did it. You did it with time to spare.
Great. All right. Well, have a great weekend. Thank
All
you
right.
for helping
Thanks.
me.
Bye.
Bye.